First up on Last Call today is Detroit in dire straits. Ford making a shocking move, cutting the price of its electric F-150 pickup by as much as $10,000. Now that slams shares because Ford is already losing billions on its electric car and truck business. This despite the fact that the top-of-the-line electric F-150 can cost more than $90,000 each. So now, with these price cuts, there are worries about even greater losses at Ford. But let's be fair. This is not just a Ford or U.S. problem. General Motors said it will lose money on electric vehicles for the next few years. And this weekend, the CEO of VW issued a big warning to employees that costs must come down or more jobs will be cut. And any car company not named Tesla is struggling to not only sell many electric cars, but actually make any money on the ones they do sell. Shares of Ford and GM are now lower than where they were 2 years ago, even as the overall market is higher. Remember, this was supposed to be an industry rebirth. Now, I know we talk a lot about EVs on this show, and we are critical of parts of the business. To be clear, this is not some anti-EV stance. As we have said, they are fast and they are fun to drive, and I've driven a lot. But we are critical because Detroit appears to be betting the farm on a business that has not proven it can make any money. And there are thousands or 10,000s or more jobs on the line. The bottom line is, it's not anti-EV, it's pro-Detroit. And we want it and its people to succeed. So let's dive into this and bring in CNBC.com reporter and, by the way, Michigan resident Mike Wayland, as well as auto expert and car coach Lauren Fix. And Mike, listen, and people who don't know me, they don't know what cars I've owned. It may surprise them. You know, you and I have talked on and off the record. This is not bashing EVs. When I'm seeing billions of losses, the unions are worried. They're stocking up. They're filling up car dealerships, particularly in places like Michigan. Are your friends, are your colleagues, are your sources, are they growing worried about this path?
You know, Brian, you mentioned the stock is down 6% day for Ford. And one of the most concerning things is that as early as May, Jim Farley was saying that we're raising the price of F-150, we're raising the price of the Ford Transit E, but we're cutting the price of the Mach-E to be comparable and challenge Tesla. The problem with the cutting of the F-150 Lightning is there is currently little to no competition for the Lightning right now. And they had 200,000 reservations, and they've only sold 25,000 vehicles in the U.S. So good for consumers, the lower price, but when you've got a company restructuring and that needs the profits of these vehicles, and they've only sold 25,000 out of 200,000 reservations, and they're lowering the price, that's not good.
Yeah, and Lauren, to Mike's point, you know, you got the Rivian, okay, the Rivian R1T pickup truck. That's a different beast. Right. If you've seen them, I've driven them both. It's a lot smaller side by side, but Rivian actually raised prices a couple of years ago. What does it tell you? That a truck with no current real competition is having to cut prices.
Well, I talked to Ford today, and I spoke with one of the internals, and they tell me that they're scaling. In other words, they said, in quote, Ford says they're scaling production to meet customer demand, and they're planning on 150,000 vehicles for this year. And they are claiming that because they're more efficient, that they're going to be able to produce more of them at a lower price. But I spoke with some people in Michigan, and there's a 92-day turn. In other words, it means vehicles are sitting on the lots for at least 92 days. Dealers, not just in Michigan, but also in New York, where I live, have said, listen, we can't find any interest in EVs, not just the Ford trucks. We're not just beating on Ford. It's literally any of the electric vehicles. People are saying, and I've driven them all. I've driven all the Rivians, I've driven the Teslas, I've driven them all, and they are fun cars. So we're not beating up on EVs. We're just talking about the fact that there's an infrastructure problem. We can't get enough charging stations, and people are upset about it. Now, yes, there is a $7,500 tax credit, and if you're taking almost $10,000 off the price of a Ford truck, and then you add on your state credit, you could be saving almost $20,000 off the price of that truck.
Lauren, okay, fair enough. You know what? I'm not going to bash EVs, but I'm going to go after the Ford F-150. And I race a Ford-powered car. I love Ford. I love the company. I know people that live next door to the Fords in places like Grosse Pointe. Here's the bottom line. The Platinum F-150 can cost $90,000. It has an EPA-listed range of 300 miles, which Motor Trend magazine says is more like 250. The lower-end one is $50,000 to $60,000. It goes 200 miles on a charge. If you're towing something, that's 150 miles. What are you going to tow your boat from Detroit to Walloon Lake in Michigan and stop twice? I don't understand what the industry is trying to do.
So, Brian,
Mike, go ahead, Mike. I got on a little rant there.
I'm going to throw this out there that the truck buyers historically have been the least amount of change. They do not want change in their pickup truck. It's why their loyalty is so high. It's why the companies are very, very particular in what they change in their trucks. And the EVs, they wanted to beat Tesla. They wanted to beat the Cybertruck. GM wanted to beat them. Ford wanted to beat them. So they got these vehicles out there because that is their bread and butter. And they did not want to lose that market share like they did to all the other EVs, like they did to Tesla. And they got these out here, and it's still a very, very unproven market. And we're going to see how this pans out. But today I talked with GM executives and I talked to UAW leaders. And GM says we're monitoring it, we're evaluating it, and we'll see what happens. Sometimes they react, sometimes they don't. But the UAW is also very cautious about moving over to EVs right now.
Lauren, Mike just said it's an unproven or uncertain market. I don't know if it is. I think it's becoming proven. And it's becoming proven that there's a lot of problems. I did a cars.com. Anybody at home can do this. Go to cars.com or Auto Trader, put in whatever zip code you want, do a couple 100-mile radius search, and search for a new or used F-150 Lightning. Hundreds come up. You said 93-day turn on the inventory. Again, I'm not slamming Ford, but they keep talking about customer demand. Where? If there's a 93-day inventory, it should be 0 days of inventory if demand is that high.
Right. Well, I don't think demand is there anymore. I think we have a big issue with people waking up to the fact that there's not enough charging stations. You get to one, it's either not working or it's a low level 2. Tesla just partnered with Jim Farley through Ford and with Mary Barra and their Twitter spaces saying, oh, we're going to use their infrastructure. That's great. They use it in Europe, and it's basically a low level 2 charging. So you're not really getting a benefit. If you want the fast charging, you have to buy a Tesla. And now he's got the Cybertruck, as we saw the first one roll off the line this week. That's going to cause Tesla's stock to go up. People are going to buy those vehicles because people that buy his product buy a tech item. People that are buying trucks, and I do own a Ford truck, they buy it because they're hauling something. I'm hauling race cars as well. So
I knew I liked you. Listen, Mike, we got to go. I got to go. And I'll be honest, if Ford is watching, I might buy an F-150 Lightning, but you know what I would buy it for? I'd buy it for driving around town to show off that I've got an electric F-150 Lightning. I'm not driving to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in the Lightning, which I do. Quickly, Mike, how long would it take to charge a big battery like that on a level 2 charger?
I mean, it depends on the battery and the vehicle and the charging. As we've seen, a lot of the charging infrastructure isn't there. And if you're charging on even a slow charger, I mean, it could take hours and hours and hours, and a lot of people don't have that time. When I was driving it through Michigan, it charged, I think it cost me $55 on a fast charger, and I got maybe 30% of the battery back, but that was after an hour and a half. So, I mean, it can take a while, and people like their time.
And by the way, it's not free. People think it's free. It is not free. No, it is not free. But a great discussion. We're rooting for you, Detroit. We love you, Detroit. We want Detroit to win and succeed. Lauren, Mike, thank you very much.